What's up, guys? It's Nicky P and Danny D here for GTO LAB, and we got another hand history review. It's going to illustrate one of the biggest mistakes I see regulars make all the time at final tables in high pressure spots. What is the most important thing that we're trying to get across in this video?
Take whatever strategy you think you want to play for chips, polarize it a little bit, but most importantly, play smaller sizes.
If you feel like you learned something here, then Tournament Savagery is definitely going to be a course for you. It's Nicky P and Danny D here for GTO LAB, and we got another hand history review video for you today that's going to illustrate one of the biggest mistakes I see regulars make all the time at final tables in high pressure spots. They put too much money in the pot, not understanding we need to size down and build these lines that do not get us all in, because guess what? When we have a high risk premium, getting all in is really damaging to our tournament. And we definitely want to learn how to add complexity and have our strategies have bluffs and value bets, but just do it in a way where we're not going to risk getting all in very often. Dan, let's set the scene for this one. It's a 200K final table at Montenegro, and there are some unique things happening in the pre-flop setup, right? So just take us through, set the stage with the pre-flop stuff first.
For sure. Things to know here. We've got about 150 big blinds in play, 6 players left. So 25 big blind average. And the stack arrangement is pretty unique. We've got between 5 and 10 big blinds in the small blind, the big blind, and under the gun, who has folded. And then approximately we've got 40 to 50 for hijack, cutoff, and button. So Mike is opening into 2 covering stacks, but gets to call off against the blinds. So he's going to be opening 30% here, high card heavy, pretty loose. He's going to open the offsuit aces. He's going to open pocket pairs. Let's go ahead and see what happens in the hand.
So we think Mike's going to be opening. It's not going to be as tight as people think, right? When they're like, oh, there's these short stacks around, the buttons, the chip leader, like I can't open. It's like he still gets to use these high cards, like you say. He still gets to open pocket threes and just call it off versus 7 BB stack. With all that being said, if Mike's allowed to kind of open that wide range, Victor covers him on the button, not by a ton, but in this case, there is a lot of pressure on Mike because of those the micro stacks. What does that mean for Victor here on the button?
It means he gets to VPIP super loose, but he actually doesn't get to 3-bet all that much. Sure, he covers Mike, but his risk premium against Mike is also extremely high here. So he's going to have a very wide VPIP, but his value threshold is going to be quite narrow, something like jacks plus ace king, and he'll end up flatting maybe 20 to 25% of hands here.
Right. So that means some pretty unintuitive flats for some players, right? Like suited kings, suited connectors, every pair, ace-8 offs in there. And he's taking advantage of the fact that Mike is going to have to check a lot of boards out of position. It's basically what we're going to see exactly in this hand, right? If Mike has to check all these boards because he wants to play small pots because of the presence of those micro stacks, Victor just gets to leverage his chip lead by putting in 2 big blinds, and guess what? It's going to check to me 80 or 90% of the time. The only boards that are really appealing for Mike to c-bet are the ace-high boards, right? Because Mike's opening ace-4 off or maybe even a little ace-3 off. So if it comes queen-high, even some king-high, or any of the other boards that have some connectivity, Victor has a really easy job. Put in 2 big blinds and bet a lot for a small size when it checks to you, right? That's a pretty easy strat. So if you take anything away from this video, pre-flop, it's definitely, if you're the chip leader on that button, you could flat wide and just go post-flop, and it should go really well for you, right? For Mike, like we said, he probably can't do too much in terms of like shoveling a ton of money in with value and bluffs, or maybe he shouldn't. But yeah, so we faced the bet from Victor. So we said, I mean, somebody as good as Mike probably pure checked for sure, right? And then Victor, you know, if he covered by a lot more, we'd see him betting the small size just even more often, putting more pressure on Mike. But here, not that crazy different from Chip EV. He's putting in money like half the time for a small size. What is the most important thing that we're trying to get across in this video with flop strategies from OOP under ICM pressure?
Take whatever strategy you think you want to play for chips, polarize it a little bit, but most importantly, play smaller sizes than you would for chips. For chips, you are trying to get your stack in with good hands. An overpair or something like ace queen is worth your stack for chips. In this situation, getting all in with even kings here and playing a giant pot is really not that appealing. So you're going to be playing a strategy where, sure, you're check raising for value. You have some bluffs, such as this hand. You know, it's actually a pretty good hand to check raise bluff here. We've got some backdoors. We've got the ace of hearts blocker. But most importantly, we just want to use a small size because we're not trying to play this 80 big blind pot, which, by the way, would be more than half of the chips in play. Remember, there's only 150 big blinds across the whole table.
Tournament Savagery is 25 hours of structured tournament strategy by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Dvoress. This course covers pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, and the final table broken down like never before. We also cover post-flop ICM, blind versus blind, and much more. Pre-order now for $9.99 and receive Multiway Mastery by Isaac Haxton, plus 2 months of GTO LAB Pro at no additional cost.
Right. So what we're saying is basically Mike has a great bluff candidate, and he can use it. You're allowed to bluff. You're allowed to have some thin value betting, but we want Mike to raise to like 450 or 500K, which might sound really surprising to a lot of players watching this, which is why we're making the video and why we have a ton of videos like this in the masterclass, right? Don't be the guy that's just like, I'm going to check call all my value hands and I'm not going to bluff against a chip leader. That's not great, right? So we really like to add what I call this complexity. Have king, queen, have some queen, jack, have some bluffs like Mike, but realize the compounding effects of, okay, Mike made it 800 and not 500. That might sound like a small deal, but as we get to the river, the pot's going to be bigger and bigger, and now we're going to be risking getting our stack in, and we just don't have enough hands that have enough equity to do that. Now, Mike does turn a very appealing card, which makes this hand even more difficult. I think, you know, if he got anything that was 8 or higher, he was just done, right? But now he's got himself in a situation where there's 2.4 in the middle. He's got 3.7. We can see why it might have been more appealing to have that small check raise. Now we'd have a higher SPR. And we know from looking at a million spots like this, that when we want to bluff this spot, we're just trying to get the chip leader to fold some of his widest plays, right? Like his king of hearts, jack, maybe he has pocket eights or pocket nines that we can make a fold if we bet something like 33% pot here. We are not trying to go big check raise, hammer the turn, because like we said, our value threshold for that line has to be incredibly high, and the other guy's bluff catching with his whole range and just doesn't call us like he normally does, right? So here we're going to see Mike, credit to him, he's got some heart with this play, but we've got ourselves in a situation where everyone around the table, there's a 7 big blind stack, 6.5 big blinds, 10 big blinds. They're just like,
yeah, let's go. Free pay jump, right?
Yeah. So somebody's winning money off this play, and it's not Mike, right?
Like, look, you look at this sort of spot for chips, and you kind of go double flush draw board. What do I want to do here? Go geometric with a polar range, or even front load geometric on a board like this. But under ICM pressure, this 1.6 million chip bet is actually a lot more like 2.4, let's say. And the reason for that is because the chips that you're putting in potentially losing are worth a lot more than the chips that you gain to win if things go well for you. So I really like Mike's line here. I just wish he had gone to 500K on the flop instead of making it quite large. And then when he gets to the turn, deeper SPR and still betting a smaller percentage of the pot because of the ICM pressure.
So the river, we get the king of spades. Now, obviously, Mike's going to wave the white flag. And the big point of this hand is that he could have, risked a lot less, potentially gave up the turn a lot, maybe just used like ace of hearts, 5 of spades as his primary bluff and been fine. So a lot of good ideas from him in terms of like knowing that I need to bluff versus wide ranges. I'm allowed to bluff and have some thin value, but we miss the sizing stuff, which actually ends up harming how much our stack is worth in the tournament with these short stacks around, right? So I would have liked to see him use smaller sizes and end up this hand, if he does give up after betting the turn, still stay in a firm third place, much better chance to outlast those other guys. And these spots come up all the time, right? So let's recap and look at these strategies and kind of what we're saying. And then there's going to be a lot more of this in the Tournament Savagery course that we're working on. And I think that it's probably one of the more important things I've learned over the last several years in studying ICM, and one of the biggest topics in the course that I think everyone can get a lot of immediate value with. As we see, Mike's going pure check here, not surprising. And we don't think that he didn't know that, right?
Yeah, I think he nailed that one for sure.
Victor, time, small size.
No surprises here.
Easy stuff. This is the big one, right? Okay, we've got our options of raising really tiny to 5 big blinds over 2, or raising to 8, which is what Mike did. Sorry, Mike, not to shower you, but 0.00 is pretty strong evidence we don't want it, right? But we can see his hand is a great candidate to add those bluffs. And we can see we've got other stuff like some queen jack with a heart, some queen 10, a little bit of king queen, some ace queen, right? So we still have that value. We still have normal chip EV mechanics, right? Like we want to check raise the king 6 of hearts more than the king jack of hearts. We want to pure call the ace jack of hearts, that stuff, right? Like we're doing normal chip EV stuff. We're dialing that size back so that when we plan ahead for rivers, we're not getting our stack in. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, nothing magic is happening here. You know, you're more aggressive with kings and aces. You're still doing some mergey sort of stuff with some pocket pairs, with some queen 10. You're very aggressive with sets. You have some polar check raises, such as ace of hearts 5. You got some real draws. Just the frequency is a little bit lower, but most importantly, the sizing. Way less money going into the pot.
So, Victor, again, when we think about turn play, part of it is that wide flat, wide stab when check to, wide continue versus small size. So he's going to have his backdoor stuff. He's going to have some high card stuff like ace 10. We're going to be able to target that on turns. So the turn we get, super passive. Mike, again, has a bluff candidate that we don't have to get into specifics. His is low frequency. Magic suits are high frequency. But the point is, if we look at every turn card in the deck, this is never going to happen for chip EV, right? Where Mike's entire betting volume, unless it's a deuce, which would be the nutting card for all of his, a deuce or a 3, other than those 2 cards, his entire range goes into either check or B33, which you never see spots like this across the whole deck on a check raise line for chip EV, right? So this tells us it's not trying to get the stack in. Our whole turn range is going into small bet or check pretty much. So yeah, when we see that big size, we don't love it because it gets the pot too big out of position against that chip leader. And if we did go down the block line and we look at how rivers play, again, we're going to see when we've got SPR1 and we went check raise, bet turn, we have another 0.00 all in. We're just trying to go check raise tiny, B33 turn, B50 river. We don't need to get the stack in. We don't need to build these ranges that get it all in. We love to kind of have that value and those bluffs, but not risk our whole stack.
You have to remember at the very start of the video, given the rough stack setup, there's 3 guys that are under 10 big blinds. One way to conceptualize everything is if you leave yourself 10 big blinds or 15 big blinds, you are still going to be in 4th, or rather in 3rd in the tournament. Right? There's 3 guys that are going to be shorter than you. So there's just such a premium on leaving yourself something back. And whether you have, at the end of this hand, 55% or 45% of the chips in play, that really doesn't, the 55% of chips in play just really isn't that much better than 45. But having 0 chips in play and being out of the tournament is way worse than still being in third place.
Yeah. There is some honor in leaving a stack out there on the altar, sacrificing it to the poker gods once in a while. But at a final table, when there's a couple 7 big blind stacks and a 10 big blind stack, and you started with 40 and you're playing for 4 million, maybe it's not time for that sacrifice, you know? So thanks for watching, guys. There's a lot more of this stuff in the course. So if you feel like you learned something for the post-flop ICM stuff here, then Tournament Savagery is definitely going to be a course for you, because we're talking about pre-flop to post-flop ICM stuff in a ton of that course. And there's a lot of stuff like this where I find it, even myself, I learned a bunch, and it's really helpful for my game.
That's right. Buy the course. I learned a bunch making it. So you're definitely going to learn some stuff watching it.